All right, what's going on, everyone? We're back with another episode of Diary of a Sales Engineer. Today, we're actually going to do our little year-end review. It's your boy Samir Kosser.
And I'm Ryan Kruger. And Samir, I think it's time for us to open up the diary and reflect on our first year of podcasting together.
Yeah, it's been quite a ride. But before we go into that, I think there's some congratulations to be said. I saw some exciting news you shared with everyone earlier this week. You want to
Yeah,
share what
yeah.
the
I've accepted a new job as a senior solutions engineer. So I'm moving away from sales engineer to solution engineer and had previously been a solution consultant. So same role at three different places, all with different names. So I know that's a challenge that we all face within pre-sales itself. And we've done some posting around that, but super excited about the new role and think this will be a really interesting time for us going into 2025 for us to do some reflection around me starting a new job and what does that mean, right? From your first week to building up to your first demo to working on your first deals. I think it'll be a really interesting time to kind of capture some live thoughts and feelings around this stuff. As I know that's really what a lot of people are looking for when they come to our podcast is, how do I get started? What do I do in a new role? So now I'll have some very interesting live perspective on it versus trying to think back a few years onto what did it feel like? What were the things I did? Now I'll be able to do them all live and in real time.
Yeah, no, that's going to be exciting. I'm excited for that. I know you're on what day? It's Wednesday, day 3. We're going to have some great conversations as you ramp up your first week, your first month, your first quarter, the first closed deal. So I'm very excited to walk through that journey. But this year's been wild. Who knew that this time last year we would be here 13 episodes deep, building something that people actually listen to. So I don't know if everyone knows like the origin story. So maybe we can start there of, where.
Sure. Yeah. So, little origin, little background story around the Diary of a Sales Engineer is that Samir and I did work together previously. At the time of working together, Samir was posting on LinkedIn and he was doing all this sales engineering content. And I'd always been passionate about sales engineering, but I'll tell you that for me, like while I wanted to maybe do some of those things, I was way too scared to get involved. And watching Samira do these posts day in and day out and make fun memes, I pulled him aside on a one-on-one. I actually remember scheduling time with you, and I was like, "Hey, can you just tell me more about what you're doing?" And then for probably the next month, I would say you were encouraging me, like, "Hey, get started, get started." And I was like, "What if no one wants to hear what I have to say?" And eventually you just gave me enough encouragement to get started. And then I remember like, first post goes out and you end up getting like 50 views on it. You're like, wow, what did I just, venture into? And so then you're scared to make the next one. But, with Samir's encouragement, it started my journey into making posts on LinkedIn. So I don't know, Samir, reflect back on that time of you passing along some encouragement to me. We'll get more into how we shaped and made the podcast, but tell me why you were, so encouraging to get started.
I think it was just that one, it's easier to kind of do things with someone else. It was nice to almost have someone else to like spitball ideas around, double check the, hey, does this actually make sense? And then two, like I was in your shoes, like not super long before you were there. Like maybe like 3, probably max 6 months. I had a little bit of a head start and I was like, well, these would be things that I've been telling myself that have helped and what I've heard from others. And honestly, like you have really good ideas. And I was like, it would be a disservice to just keep this in your head. At that point, you had developed, an internship program, and I watched you put that all together and watched you mentor one of our other colleagues through that program. And I was like, he's got a lot of good ideas that deserve to be out there. And so the content that you were coming up with was good. And I think you just needed a little bit of a push to get it over the finish line. And the fact that you came to me being curious about how I was doing it or what my thought process was showed that you had enough desire to pursue it. You just, like I said, just need a little bit of a push out of the nest to be able to spread those wings and keep posting. And to this day, you're putting up good stuff out there.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's like very scary. Even as we've started this podcast, right? Like I'll be very open about my feelings and emotions around this that I had a lot of not necessarily like imposter syndrome because we're, just kind of like doing something, but I had those moments of doubt of why would anyone care about what I have to say,
Mhm.
right? Why would anyone want to interact with my thoughts and my feelings? And so that really kept me away from doing any sort of posting. But eventually, good people come in your life, and Samir came into mine and encouraged me to get started. And now, fast forward, we make it here. I'll tell you, like after the journey into posting, we're making some posts, and again, but those weeks would happen where I'd have like 50 views, 100 views, back to 50 views, and then you told me some really good encouragement. You're like, every post is honestly just a post. It doesn't have to be more than that, right? Whether you get good numbers or not, it's just all a part of the same journey. And I was like, oh, okay, all right, I like that. I resonate with it. And so then you keep posting. And then you watch the numbers really start to kind of take off and get to where they're at today. And so, that was really encouraging. And so then the posting starts to shift into like, hey, it's going pretty well. People are interacting with our stuff. And you come up with this idea, we should do a podcast. Now, at the time that you come to me and say, "Hey, I want to do this podcast," I'm like, I don't know. Again, right? I'm back to square one on this. And for those listening and fans of the show, I used to do like a fantasy football podcast, and I've tried this. I've tried my hand at this in the past, right? And in the past, you start off, you do a few episodes, and you realize like, hey, 5 people are listening to it, and one of them's my dad. And so you get discouraged pretty quickly on, I would say, but you were relentless in your pursuit to get this started. I will 100% say that. From a sales side of things, right? You did a good job selling me. You nurtured the lead for quite a while because I was very hesitant. And every time you'd bring it up, I'd get dodgy on you. I was the prospect that was like a little bit interested, but also like, hey, I have something coming up. Let's talk about it next week. Let's talk about it next month. The salesperson in you just like kept at it, kept at it, kept at it. And eventually it was the on site in person that brought the deal over the finish line. You came to Denver, and not only did you have a plan for the podcast, you said, hey, here's the tools we're going to use. But you said, I have a name for the podcast. I think we should call it Diary of a Sales Engineer. And I remember sitting with you in that WeWork. And at that point, as your prospect, I was like, can't let him down. He came up with a name. We got to do it. We got to get started on it. Let's make it happen. And now here we are, 13 episodes in. We're wrapping up our first year in our Santa hats, which we'll touch base on here momentarily. But walk me through the sales piece here, man. How did you convince me? Tell the audience.
Well, I know that. So Ryan and I were colleagues first and then became friends. And I unfortunately was laid off at the company we were working together. And after that, we continued to stay in touch because we just got along really well and always wanted to do something together. But what that something was, we had no idea. And I was like thinking to myself, what is like some low hanging fruit that we could just get started and just like build something? It doesn't need to be anything that's going to make a lot of money or anything like that, just to get ourselves acclimated to building something from the ground up. And, we talk pretty regularly. Both of us would be asked questions from aspiring sales engineers, current sales engineers about various topics, which is what actually our episodes come from, you all who send us DMs. And I shared with Ryan that I'm getting these DMs. Ryan's like, oh, I'm getting DMs like that too. And I was like, well, we're already answering these questions. We're already doing it multiple times and almost like giving the same answers to different people. Why not just do it in like a podcast form? And now when someone asks, how do I get into sales engineering? We just point them to a video that we already created. And from that perspective, Ryan's like, okay, that's a one-time effort for like a, reusable resource. And then it started becoming the point where, all right, what do we name this thing? Like, how are we actually going to do the logistical side of stuff? And that's where we mulled over. We went through a bunch of different iterations, and we're like, that one could get misconstrued, or people might think of something else. And finally, I got inspired by another podcast that I listened to, Diary of a CEO. Many of you have heard of Stephen Bartley. He has that, and that's where kind of the inspiration of Diary of a Sales Engineer came from. And then that would allow us to kind of go in many different directions. It didn't tie us down. And as soon as I said that, I could see Ryan's eyes be like, this could actually work. And once it was like, handling those objections, showing him the onboarding plan of, all right, once we do this, these are the steps and this is what we have to do. I think that's ultimately what closed you, was the fact that it was like, okay, all the hurdles I'm putting in front of myself are solved. Now I can't think of any other reason why to say no. So let's just say yes and do it. And since the first one, we've just been continuing to put out more and more. And it was really cool after we put out the first one that people hit us up to be like, hey, can I come on the pod? And I remember us two talking. We're like, people want to come on our podcast, but we don't even know what our podcast is about. We should put out one episode, and we're getting DM'd to get on the pod, and we're like, what is this? Like, clearly there's something here. So I think once you like, there was an inkling we wanted to do something, and this is where we're starting, and so I'm like stoked to see where we go. But we've just begun.
And we got some interesting feedback from the podcast, as we release it on Spotify, YouTube, and it actually was able to give us some geographic locations of where people are listening from. And it looks like there are 35 different countries that have actually checked out our podcast. So, think about like where our voice is spreading to. I mean, it's exciting and it's crazy and it's surreal, right? It is very surreal. Like, we've had amazing guests come on the show, even though we had no plan originally for those guests to come on. We're like, we were talking in Denver, like, yeah, I think it'll just be the two of us, we'll be on and it'll be mainly us just talking about sales engineering stuff. Then we start getting hit up by some really cool people. And we start to realize, hey, how awesome it'd be if we can help enhance their voices too by having them on the podcast. And we're so grateful to have had some amazing guests come on. And just like it's surreal to see us in 35 different countries, it's amazing and surreal to see that we've had some incredible guests come on and help out the show and spread the good word around what we're doing in this industry. And Samir, like, one thing Samir had told me back in Denver, he's like, the one thing I just want out of this, the one thing I want is I just want to make sales engineering a household name. I would say we've taken a step forward, baby step, we'll call it, but we've done a little bit of our work to help maybe spread the good word. So that feels pretty good on our end.
Yeah, that is definitely like one of my life goals, is making sales engineering a dining table career. I'm sure every SE listening to this, and now 'tis the season for holiday parties, right? Or dinner parties. You're going out with your spouse, your partner, a friend, and they ask classic, so what do you do? And you're like, yeah, I'm a sales engineer, or I'm a solutions consultant, or I'm a whatever pre-sales role name it is. And they just look at you like, what is that? Are you in sales, or you're an engineer? You're a consultant? Like, and you have to go and explain it, and we all have our own spiel. Eventually I've just been like, yeah, I sling software, and let's just continue on the conversation. But I think that like SE, like as we all know, is one of the slept on gems that everyone stumbles into. And I think one day people won't stumble into it. People will have the foresight to be like, oh yeah, when I grow up, I want to be an SE.
I do think so. And I know we mentioned it at the end of our last podcast, but I do think like a fun episode for us to do at some point would be like sales engineering in the wild. I do think as sales engineering becomes more of a household name, and obviously it's primarily focused around technology sales right now. But when I really boil down what a sales engineer is and does in my head, it applies to so many different aspects of sales all over the place, right? You could be a car salesman and you could be the sales engineer at a car salesman. And you go in and you say, hey, tell me, why do you need a new car? Versus the approach that they take now, where it's just like, kind of like, I'm going to get you in a car. I'm going to get you out of this parking lot today. What if they were to actually sit down and figure out the needs and the why behind you wanting a car? And I think like those are the skill sets that people will eventually strive to continue to work at. And when they work on those things, I think we'll see like the salesperson will become more of a traditional sales engineer, because it will be focused more on discovery and providing those sort of relationship building aspects of a sale. Because I can go online, I can buy a car. Do I want to go online and buy a car? I don't. Other people probably do. But I would like to go in and meet with somebody if they wanted to do the discovery around why I wanted and or needed a car. That's the difference, right? But right now I go into the car lot, and this actually happened to me a few years back. I show up to the car lot. My wife and I are looking at a new car. I'm just in like baggy shorts, baggy t-shirt, baggy hoodie. The guy wrote me off from the second I walked in. And I'm like, wow, like appreciate you basically blowing us off here and being super rude. But this is why people are buying cars online. Now, if he had sat down and said, hey, can you tell me a bit more about you, what you do in your profession? Can you tell me why you and your wife are looking for a new car? What type of car are you looking for? I would have been like, hey, I'll buy a car from you. But when you're super rude, I'm not going to buy a car.
So safe to say you did not get a vehicle that day from that salesperson.
No, no. The crazy thing is too, like my parents were looking at buying a car. So like there could have been a nice little pipeline of actually having a few sales. But instead, they made a split decision on who I was the second I walked in. That's why you don't judge a book by its cover, right? You just get to know people and have normal conversations and like good things can happen. But that's the human aspect of sales. And we talk so much about that, right? The importance of, you get on a call with somebody, establishing good rapport from the very beginning that you see them. You can't write people off based on the way they look or how they show up to a call. It's even harder when somebody shows up with no video on. But even then, you can't, like, you have to still figure out, how am I going to connect with this person, even though I can't see them? I can hear them. So now I have to listen more intimately to their voice, right? Can I hear inflection one way or another? Maybe they're a little bit more interested or less interested in something. And I will say I've had some of those prospects that are, camera off at first, but sometimes if you do a really, really good job, they'll come camera on at
No
some point in
camera on.
time.
That
That's an
happened to me
exciting feeling.
last week actually, where I was just going to ask you as you were talking. It's like, okay, if you're on a maybe a one, it's you and the prospect, just two of you on the call. They're camera off. Are you camera on or camera off?
I am camera on. I've become a huge camera on person.
Me too.
I think that is just something you can do to differentiate yourself in sales. Previously in the past, like I had been more like, if they're camera off, what's the point of being camera on? But I think through everything I've learned over the past few years, like it's just better to be camera on. You got to
Mm-hmm.
get over that initial feeling of like, hey, it's pretty awkward to be camera on when they're off. But look, they can see your face, they can see your emotions, your reactions. That could change the way they feel about the product or service that you're offering.
Yeah. And I always like when it's in that situation, like I'm definitely 100% camera on like all the time, type of person. They'll always like apologize or they'll be like, "Oh, sorry, like my camera's not working with Zoom," or "Oh, like I haven't had my morning coffee yet, so I'm gonna be camera off," and like they'll call it out. It's like you do what you want to do, but I'll have a camera on, and but to your point, it's the best when they start off camera off. You're like 15-20 minutes into the call, and they flip it on, and you're like, "Ooh."
And you can't judge a book by their cover, right? Like you said, there's legitimate reasons why people do need to be camera off on a call, right? Hey, I've been on back-to-backs all day. I need to eat my lunch. I don't really want to eat my lunch in front of somebody I haven't ever met before. So, have some empathy, right? Like have some empathy for people, knowing that there's other things going on that may cause them to want to be camera off in a specific day, and you can't judge them for having it off. Say, hey, look, I'm really excited to have you here. And hopefully you build a positive enough relationship where maybe they're not camera on for the first call, but the second or third call, they might be.
They might be, yeah.
And that's always fun too, because, you might actually, there's one deal I'm thinking of in my past where we had probably 5 or 6 different calls with this prospective buyer, never saw who they were. At the end towards closing, they came on camera on, and I was like, wow, I was like, that's amazing. It's nice. I was like, it's nice to actually see what you look like in person. Like, this is very exciting for me.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of camera on behaviors, we both bought our Christmas hats out. I think that, I personally, whether I was going into the office or being virtual, like this time of year, I'll always whip it out because one, anytime I would interact with someone, it's like an automatic smile. It's a low hanging fruit kind of smile. Like you see someone in a Christmas hat, you can't not just like either chuckle to yourself or smile or like just feel a little bit happy. And just this week, every single one of my calls that I've been on with prospects, the hat's been called out and the hat's been loved. And they're like, oh my God, like, we love your hat. That's all. It's all, like first 5 minutes of the call. And now you're just like, it's kind of like a little of a hack, right? Everyone is already in a good mood and you can continue business as usual. It's not like super distracting, but it's also just I think it's an easy way for you to just get some goodwill, like unintentional goodwill.
I saw your post today, and I was like, so smart, right? Like typically you can load your background up with these kinds of things. And I was thinking of a previous guest of ours who would be so happy to see you in this hat. So shout out Yevgeny. I think that this would fall right into one of those amazing sort of first things that somebody's going to latch on to the second they see it. Why are you wearing a Santa hat, right? Now they probably know, like, hey, it's the holiday season, but it just brings that light, that smile to a call right away and makes them know, like, this is a nice, safe spot for us to chat about things. So I really like the post that you brought out today. I think it's an amazing strategy. And the good news is, like, I got my Bears one on. The Bears are so bad that people are not only going to get a smile on their face, but they're going to have a lot of sympathy for me. They're going to say, wow, you're like willing to wear that after all the losses they've had in a row. That's bold. And say, yeah, they're one of my true loves in life.
Well, any other reflections for 2024 before we jump into what our plans are for next year?
Yeah, I mean, I think the last thing I'll point out about 2024 is I've learned a lot, right? We've had amazing guests come on and teach us new things. And even the skills that I think I'm good at, like, they all need more work. So something that I'm particularly going to practice for next year is going to be the amount of open-ended questions that I ask on calls. Now, I think I've maybe mentioned at some point in time, like, I do believe that are there any questions, a very natural conversation question to have. But if you use it more than once on a call, I think it plays itself out very fast. I do think there's just like a natural feeling when you're talking to somebody. If you and I are having dinner, like, hey, do you have a question about that? Like, I think that's like a natural sort of thing that can happen within our vocabulary. But I think at times I overuse it where I'll end up using it 3-4 times on a call.
Mm-hmm.
And I use the same kind of like open-ended questions in there. So my goal is to really work on that for next year. I think it's an area that I can really improve on. And then, we're talking about the Santa hats in the background. I've been doing so much traveling that my backgrounds have been super boring. I do promise that whenever I do land and get a house here soon enough, my background is going to be bomb. So in 2025, at some point in time, my background will be cool.
You're going to upgrade the background once you've figured out a home base and you're not
Yes.
moving every 6 weeks.
What
Yeah.
about you, Samir? Anything that you've learned over 2024?
A lot can happen in a year. At the beginning of 2024, I couldn't imagine myself being here at the end of it. I am in a different full-time role. I've experienced a layoff and then getting into another job and then being able to now build a product that is helping sales engineers, which I never thought was like possible. And then also just starting to like build something of our own has been really fun, and learning all those things on the side. On top of that, like, I started school this year pursuing my master's in AI, and I like remember why I didn't want to go back to school. But we're grinding it out. We're a third of the way done. We did 3 classes down, 7 more to go. But just the fact that during it, what it showed me is that I can do a lot more than I originally think that you're capable of. And it's just like one foot after another, and then you look back and you're like, wow, I'm at the top of the mountain, or like the next summit, and I didn't really think I could get up here, but I just kept focused on the next task, and eventually, brick by brick, you're building it up. There's a lot of cliches in there, but there's a lot of truth in it. So I'm excited for 2025. I think there's a lot of things that I want to learn. Um, you know, tighten up my demos, but also just like really truly think about what does it mean to be an SE? How do you build out a world-class SE organization? Like, what are different ways to get more people into this industry and get more people aware of the benefits and the fun that we have? And so kind of a broad scope of what I'm trying to do. And then at the same time, like, I want to build like some applications personally. Next 2025, I want to build a couple apps. Given the plethora of like AI tooling out there that can do a lot of the grunt work for you, I do think 2025 is like a year to start making anything. A couple things on my list is literally
Hey, don't share the good ideas here. Hold on. We may. Hey, wait. Do we gotta hold these for the side? I don't know.
well,
Like,
I would say this is not like it's not a groundbreaking idea, but
Okay,
it's
all right. Yeah, I mean, hey, feel free to throw it out there, but otherwise, we if it's something groundbreaking,
now
hold it off to the side. Let's iterate on it.
this is just like a personal thing that like my wife and I have been talking about. It's we're trying to better understand like budgeting pretty much. Like we've tried different things, but all end up being like too cumbersome. So it's like I want to kind of start from scratch and how how can we like try to run our household like a business in the sense of like we know how much we're spending on various different categories so that we can just be more mindful about our income and expenses. And like, we've tried Mint, we've tried Rocket, Lent Rocket something or something or the other. Like,
Some rocket that clearly wasn't a rocket.
was not a rocket. But yeah, I mean, just wanting to build something simple just for us to be able to better understand and make it easier for us to not like what I was doing is at the end of the month, I would go and download our transactions from our credit card and then put them in a spreadsheet and then like categorize them. And that took way too long. And it's like, well, I wish I could just do this once I make a transaction, let me get a notification with a prediction of what the transaction should be. If that's correct, say yeah. If it's not correct, fix it and then say yes. And now, if I want to say it's the 11th of December, how much money have we spent on eating out this month? We've only spent $50. Okay, sure. Let's go out to dinner and get something nice. Oh shit, we spent $250. Okay, maybe we should make some food at home. Like being able to ask those types of questions is, personal app of mine that I want to build. The other ones
Okay.
we'll discuss offline.
The other ones we'll discuss offline. Yeah, hey, yeah, like anything groundbreaking, before we share it with the audience. But look, yeah, I mean, I would say like 2025, a year of possibilities, right? Like tools are only getting better, easier, and faster to use. I do think maybe not in 2025 entirely, but I will say by middle of 26, end of 26, you'll be able to code in natural language. I don't think you're going to need to know how to code in SQL, Python. We're already getting pretty close, in my opinion, on being able to do it in plain English. There are some hiccups on like, needing to be able to prompt really well to get really good outputs. But I think within 18 months, I think, the ability to code will be in the hands of every single user in the world to do it in your natural language. So I'd say that's really exciting. And look, maybe, maybe if our audience is really excited about it, Samir, we can maybe do like some more YouTube shorts or like live YouTube videos and we like walk through using something technical or trying to build something together and we just throw up a video of us trying and talking it through. I think that could be interesting just to see like the sort of thought process that we have or how we're teaching ourselves stuff. I mean, I'll tell you, like, if I run into new challenges today, I'll actually pop it into ChatGPT and I am walking through step by step. Hey, actually, can you explain this a little bit, cleaner to me? I want to understand exactly what I'm doing. And it typically allows me to get to the answer. It just takes a little bit of time, but I'm teaching myself along the way. I would like to use these LLM tools maybe more as teachers. I think that's like a really good practical application of them is to teach myself new stuff. And so 2025, I would say the year of learning. One last thing that I learned, and I want to call this out today, and I don't know why, but one thing I learned, and I think it's one of the coolest, exciting things I learned this year. I was able to demo off one screen. So if you're out there and you like rely on your monitors, I'm telling you, it is possible to do. It is definitely nerve wracking. Don't get me wrong. But if you want to challenge yourself at some point in time, take your laptop, go to a coffee shop and just have your laptop, or go to a co-working space, just have your laptop. It is all possible to do. And you really have to trust your natural instincts then as a sales engineer, because you can't rely on checking something or double verifying, or even slacking becomes very difficult on one screen. So you got to be able to phone Slack. I would say like that's a good challenge. If you're like really wanting a challenge as an SE, try the demo off one screen. It's very interesting, but I do think you get some really good output because you are quite literally going to have to use every sales engineering skill you have. There are no outlets anymore.
Yeah. No, that's a great call out. I think one of the cool things I got to experience this year was I demoed off an iPad at conferences, and that was a whole other thing because one, the iPad interface is different from your point and click mouse interface, and if you've never played with your product on an iPad, you don't really know how it's going to react to certain things, and I found that out while I was figuring out the demo flow, like morning of. But I think I would highly recommend you try at the next conference you're at, bring an iPad and demo off of it because one, you don't need to be stuck behind a booth. If you think about the conferences, people are standing. The computer is at the desk height and you're kind of hunched over, or
It's
it's
the
not in a,
worst. It's the worst. I'm 6'8". It's way worse for me.
yeah.
But I feel, look, and even then, like sometimes like I'll have people come to the booth and I'm like, hey, you take a seat. Then I'm bent over and I'm like, this feels weird. There's like just so many things off about this. I like the challenge there. That's a really good challenge to have, because then you're actually interacting with people. Hey, let me just show you really quick. I'm standing up. We're right next to each other. Let me just give you a quick little demo of what this even looks like on an iPad. Imagine how good it's going to look on your Mac or your PC.
Yeah, and you don't even have to say that. People are always like surprised, like, "Oh wow, it looks really great on the iPad," and they put two and two together by themselves. So if your product can do it, definitely bring an iPad to the next conference and run a demo off an iPad and watch how people interact with you. It's actually pretty awesome, and I'm not gonna demo off a computer anymore at a conference ever.
All right. So, what are the big plans for 2025? You want to walk through at least a couple that we have planned out here?
Well, one of them we touched on at the top of this call. Given that you are starting a new senior role, walking through just your onboarding experience. I think our second episode we talked about a 30, 60, 90-day plan, and we actually put together a worksheet. So if you haven't seen that, definitely go check that out. That's been helpful. So that's definitely going to be one thing about how am I getting demo ready, how's it been working my first few deals? How did I learn a new product? How did I identify all the different stakeholders within the company and things like that? So that's definitely going to be a plus. We do have quite a backlog of people that we have plans of bringing on, some really fun creators. We have some ideas of trying to cold call some folks. So
There's
stay
one
tuned.
person in
There's
particular, Samir.
one,
I'm dying to make the video.
yeah,
I even think, I know you're traveling coming up here before the year is up, but maybe in January, you and we drive into the middle of Indiana. We meet
meet
halfway.
halfway.
I'm serious. I want to make this video so badly because there is a TikTok video that I think will be super fun for us to make. And there is a guest we would love, love, love to have on. So we'll keep it in the dark for now, because I do think if we make the video and it's done right, I think we have a shot of making it happen.
I
But I do
agree.
want us to get on that.
Yeah. So we have some exciting guests in our pipeline, some people that we are in the process of prospecting. So we are prospecting guests just to bring on a broader variety of people for us to come and talk to. And as like SCs, we interact with the whole business. So, so far we've been really focused on the SCs and the AEs, but next year we're really going to try to spread out and bring in some SDRs, BDRs, bring in some product folks, bring in some engineers, bring in some people from marketing, just because as SEs, we need to understand their role and their jobs. And then also talk about how we interact with that side of the business and how we can all like work together and learn from each other, because they have a lot of knowledge that is very helpful to you as an SE.
Yeah, and if you are listening and you think, hey, this would be a super great guest, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to prospect to them. Or if you're listening to this episode and you want to come on, feel free to shoot us a message. We are more than happy to bring different guests on. And like Samir said, I think, as we go into 2025, a lot of what we did in 2024 was very specific around just like sales engineering skills. But we sit central in an organization. So talking about how do we interact and partner with marketing, how do we interact and partner with customer success, product engineering, AI? These are all different topics that we're going to start venturing into and really broadening the horizon of just focusing on the skills that sales engineers have, because you do have to learn all these different skills. And look at different companies and organizations you work for. It's going to be more important for you to say, I need to know how to partner with marketing because it's a part of what I have to do. At other organizations, you're going to be more in task or more in charge of doing implementations. You're going to need to know how to partner with customer success and your engineering team. So, we'll want to have those conversations to help expand the different skill sets that you have.
Yeah, and we're still going to have SE best practices, tips and tricks of things that we are learning, things that we're seeing. Something I really want to touch on that I haven't had a chance to mess around with myself, but we've talked about it a little bit, is the Stream Deck and leveraging that on your demos. For those of you who don't know, Stream Decks are what a lot of video game streamers use in order to jump between different screens or different things. So you can set up hotkeys to make different actions on your screen. And so imagine if you're demoing, I have a hotkey that goes to a particular slide, or I have a hotkey that goes to a specific spot in my platform, and being able to leverage that at DemoFest New York recently. I was talking to an SE leader, and every SE on her team has a Stream Deck because it has revolutionized the way they demo. And they're like a 40, 50 SE team. And each one of them has a Stream Deck, and they had lobbied the organization to be like, give budget so that we can comp our team to go in and expense that. And so that's definitely something I want to think about, of like, what are other tools that we have in our arsenal that can help improve the overall demo experience, especially as things are looking to be virtual for the foreseeable future.
I mean, maybe it includes Valentine heart ears in February, Easter bunny ears for March, April timeframe. I don't know. Maybe like we'll continue on the hat front. I'm not sure.
We'll have some little Easter egg hat game throughout the year for those who watch our videos. Yeah, I think that we have a lot in store from what we just talked about. I'm excited to do I think doing a session of how to learn something or how to build something would be really fun, leveraging some of these tools, and we start from scratch and see what we can come up with in an hour, almost like a little hackathon,
Yeah, a little hackathon, a little
little
SE hackathon.
little SE hackathon, bringing on guests from all parts of the organization, and then just continuing to level up ourselves and help you all level up with us.
Yeah, and if you've recently started a job and you have great tips and tricks for me, feel free to shoot me a message on LinkedIn. Would love to hear them. But I'll also be sharing some of my tips and tricks or things that I see over the next 30, 69 days that are helpful. And Samir, I will say I've held true to my word. In the past, we've talked about how important it is to establish great relationships with your SE team and your AE team. I've already scheduled those virtual cups of coffee. So I am staying on top of the good practices that we are preaching on here. But I'll definitely find out some other ones that I like.
Absolutely. Well, with that, I hope everyone has a happy holiday and an exciting new year, and we will talk to you all in 2025.
Happy holidays, everyone.